Hey everybody, welcome to Mammoth Interactive's YouTube channel. First of all, I want to thank you for watching this video. And remember that this channel doesn't do Patreon. Instead, we sell our digital courses down below. And every single dollar that we get from the products you buy below goes into making more content. The best way to help out this channel and Mammoth Interactive is to subscribe to Mammoth Interactive's huge library of content. Get thousands of hours and hundreds of courses for a low price down below. We have a monthly option and a yearly option. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the video.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to our course. In this lecture, we are going to learn how we can host a static web page on GitHub. So join me at github.com, and here you'll need to create a GitHub account before we can get started. It's free to create an account, and once you've done so, then let's get started by creating a repository. So you can press Create Repository anywhere around here, like under your repositories. You can press New, or just go to github.com/new to create a new repository. A repository contains project files and revision history. So here you have your account name. Then you're going to give your repository a name. Now, for being able to host our repository or our project on GitHub, we need to make sure that our repository name is our username, Alexandra Mammoth Interactive. Now you have to use your username. And following that, add .github.io. So your username.github.io, this has to be the repository name if you want to host your repository on GitHub. Okay, then we can choose whether we want to make this repository public or private. And we can also add a README for adding a description for the project. We can add a .gitignore for files that we want to be ignored from the project and not uploaded to GitHub. We can also choose a license, like an MIT license, for example. Regardless, you don't have to select those. You can just press Create Repository. Okay, so now we have our repository created. I have mine, Alexandra, and my username here, .github.io. Okay, now we want to add code to this repository. So we want to actually add some content to the repository. So we can either add a whole project folder from our computer here. We can do that via the command line, or we can just create a simple file. So for this project, I'm just going to create a simple file. I can just create it right here in GitHub. So let's give this file a name. We'll call this index.html. So your homepage HTML file must be called index.html, and it must exist in the top level directory if you want to host your page on GitHub. So just be wary of that. Here I'm just going to write a simple HTML file. So I will just here specify the document type to be HTML. Then I'll open up HTML tags for the actual page. Then I'm going to open up the page body with opening and closing HTML tags. And inside of the body here, I can put in just a simple string such as I am hosting this on GitHub. So this is my web page, just a very simple web page, extremely simple. Now we're going to host this page on GitHub. So we've created the file. Then here we want to select commit new file. You can also add a message for the commit. So this is considered an update to our repository or our project. So you can give the update a name and a description, or you can just leave it blank with the defaults and then hit create or commit new file. So we've committed a new file to our repository. So we can see now our repository has one commit. You can click on that to see the history of all the commits from the history of time, all of the updates to the project. And we can also see the branches in our project. So you can have different versions of the project with branches. We just have one version. And here we have our file, index.html. It has been created, and here that file is. So I was able to create this file right here on GitHub, but of course you could upload a file or a whole project from your computer instead. Okay, so we have our index.html file, and now we can publish this repository. So we are going to change the repository type to public. So under settings here, I am going to manage the access here. So we have a private repository currently. I'm just going to change the project visibility and make it public. So anyone can see the code in this repository. You can type in their confirmation message to confirm and press I understand, change repository visibility. Now also, because we uploaded all of our files manually, we also have to go down here in settings to pages. So select here the pages tab, which is the tab for GitHub pages. So if you want your site to be published at your GitHub page, then you do have to make sure that your GitHub pages site can be built from a branch. So here under source, you have to select a branch, select the main branch, then select a root folder, which is /root where your index.html file is, and press save. Then we just wait 30 seconds and you can see your application. It's going to be at your GitHub username.github.io. So you can click on that or just go there in your browser. So here I am, and I can see my text here. I'm hosting this on GitHub. So this text is coming from my HTML file, index.html. And that is how I can host a static page with GitHub pages. This is great for simple projects that you want to quickly put up on GitHub. Perhaps you want your profile, your resume up here. Coming up next, we're going to learn how we can host a web server, so a non-static web page, a more complex site via Heroku, as well as GitHub, so a combination of the two. So I will see you in our next section.
Hello everyone, and welcome to day 6 of Hello Coding. Today you're going to learn how to build a website with Node.js. We're doing an introduction today, and you'll learn a lot more about Node later on in Hello Coding. We're going to get started by learning what is Node.js. Node.js is a JavaScript runtime that has several uses. One is to run a server. So Node.js can create a server and listen to incoming requests. This means that instead of building only local websites that you can visit on your computer and perhaps others could visit on their computer, instead you can build a shared site. So you can have one server with site content, and then different users can join the same instance of your site. This will open up a whole range of opportunities for you, because now you can build multiplayer sites such as multiplayer games or chat, or any website that you want to be updated live based on interaction from users on different computers. So now not only will you know how to build the front end of a website, which is the user interface, but you'll also learn how to build the back end of a website. So you'll learn how to create a server with Node.js and handle the back end of a server. So things like the database and any changes that you want to make based on one client or one visitor's interaction. As well, another use of Node.js is handling business logic. So with Node, you can connect to a database and handle requests from your site visitors. A database is used to store site data. For example, you could store profile information, you could store usernames, passwords, accounts. You could store different products if you were making an online store. So Node.js not only can build a server, but can also handle business logic. As well, it can validate input, so you can make sure you don't get invalid inputs or people trying to hack into your website. Another use of Node.js is to send responses. So your clients, your visitors will come to your website and send requests of where they want to go. And then you use your Node.js server to send a response. So you can send the user to different pages of your website. You can connect them to a chat room. You can join them into the game. And these responses come in many forms, such as rendered HTML. So your visitor will request to go to a page, and with your server, you will send them to a certain page of the site. This is different from just sending the user to a page locally via a reference link. Now we're going to learn how to send users to different pages with a server. And this is required for almost all websites because some websites can be standalone, just visit it on their computer if they're static. But for any complex project, any complex website, you will need a server because you'll have multiple visitors and you'll have to get data from them and then update your website based on their data. For example, a visitor could come to your website and make an account, and you have to use a server to store their account information and then to send them to their account page, to send them to their shopping cart, to allow the user to visit a site, make a change, and then see that change the next day. For example, a to-do list that lasts for days on days instead of just being immediately cleaned when you refresh the page. And you do all of that with Node.js. There are, of course, alternatives, but Node.js is a very popular JavaScript runtime for creating a server. So you can send responses, including data like JSON data, which is a data type, and much more, whatever response you want to send. Let's discuss more about the client and server model of computing, because this can take a bit of time to grasp if you've never heard of it before. The client refers to any visitor of your site, and they are going to ask for services, meaning they want to go to a page, they want to make an account, they want to play a multiplayer game. And the client is going to send a request whenever they join or visit your website. They're sending a request to your server, and the server performs services in response. For example, it can make an account for the client, it can connect the client to a live game, and etc. Any task that your website needs. So in terms of a website and web development, the browser is the front end. It's the client. Whenever the user pulls up their browser and types in your website, they're instantly going to become a client. Now, the web server, that's the behind the scenes of your website. There is one web server, and then there are multiple clients. So any client that visits your website will connect to the same web server. And they do this online by using what's known as an HTTP request. And then the server sends an HTTP response, meaning these requests and responses, they're happening over the web. All right, and with the client is written in JavaScript, of course, with HTML, CSS as well. Perhaps you're using React, perhaps you're using Vue as your front-end framework. The browser is written in JavaScript, and typically with web servers, they can use a variety of languages like PHP, C#, and Ruby. And so that is an option for making a web server. You could create a web server in C#, for example, which is another programming language. But with Node.js, it allows everything to be done in JavaScript. So the browser, the front end of your website is written in JavaScript, and so is your web server. And that's the other benefit of Node.js, among all of its benefits, is that it allows you to work with JavaScript both on the front end of your website and on the back end of your website. JavaScript on the server looks like this. A person visits your website and they become a client, and then they send requests to the server to launch a site. And the server uses Node.js to do that. Then, after the server has received the request, they send the response back. So they send back the HTML page of dogs.com, for example. As well, the server can connect to a database. It can authenticate content, such as making sure that the password was entered correctly, making sure the user actually has an account. It can validate any input and perform other business logic. So the server can do quite a lot, and Node.js can as well. Other features of Node.js, not just creating a server. Because Node.js is a JavaScript runtime, it means it can do a lot. It can create utility scripts, it can provide you with build tools, and much, much more. But for just starting out, we're going to learn how we can use Node.js to create a server. So later on today, we're going to learn how we can build a website and use Node.js to serve it. This means we're going to not just make the front end of a website, but actually the back end of a website. So multiple users will be able to visit the website and see the same content and also update it. This really opens up the power of you as a web developer, because now you're going to be able to make much more complex sites, not just local games, but multiplayer games, and not just a to-do list that is one-time use only, but a to-do list that can be stored over time with an account, for example. All right, let's get started. In the next lecture, we're going to dive deep into coding with Node.js.
Hello everyone and welcome back to our course. In this lecture, we are discussing how to install Node and Npm onto a Mac or Windows computer. So join me at the website nodejs.org and go to the Download tab. There we can download Node, and also this includes Npm. So here you can choose your installer, a Windows installer or a Mac OS installer, or even the source code. So if you have a Windows computer, use the Windows installer. If you have a Mac computer, use the Mac OS installer. Here for Windows, there's also options for 32-bit versus 64-bit. Likely your version of Windows is 64-bit because 32-bit is outdated. So choose the 64-bit version or whichever one matches your computer, which is likely 64-bit. You can also install for Mac and even for Linux as well. Then just go through the steps of the installer. So you have to open up the MSI file or the package file, and you have to go through the steps of installation, just clicking through to install Node. And also Npm is going to be installed with Node. Then to check if you have Node and Npm, go to your terminal or command prompt or command line application. So here I am in my terminal, and I am going to check my Node version with the command node-v. Then I can check my version of Npm with npm-v. So you should get the results of which versions of Node and Npm you have. And if you don't, that means you have to reinstall or install in an alternate way. You can also install Node and Npm via version managers. The installer is not the only way. There are lots of ways to install Node and Npm. This is just the easiest. But if you're finding that the installer doesn't work, then you can try another option. Just go to the documentation for Node and Npm. And one thing to take note of is you should make sure to install Node and Npm into a global directory like users/your username, because that way you can use Node and Npm across all of the files inside of this folder. Because if you install Node and Npm into a subfolder, like just your project folder, then you'll only be able to use Node and Npm in that project folder. So you have to make sure to install it in some kind of global folder. And that is how you can install Node and Npm onto Mac, Windows, and as well Linux. And you can do that with the installer. So now that we have Node and Npm installed, we can put it to use in our project.
Hello everyone, and welcome to day 7 of Hello Coding. Today we're going to continue our exploration of back-end web development. We've learned about Node, and we're going to learn about a module in Node called Express that is going to teach us more about servers and back-end web development. We're going to today first build a simple website with Express, and then we're going to build a chat application in Express all in 1 hour. First, let's jump in and learn what is Express.js. Well, Express is a Node.js based web framework. So in order to use Express, you will need Node. Express makes using Node.js even easier. And that is great for beginners like you, because you'll learn more about how to create and maintain servers in a very beginner-friendly manner. Now, why should you use Express? Well, Express allows us to write server code in JavaScript for websites and also mobile applications. Express is very well adopted and commonly used both in small and big companies alike. And Express is an easy entry to learning back-end web development and server-side coding, so it's a great place for a beginner. Here is an infographic about what Express does. Express manages your server code. So let's say your client joins your website. It could be your chat application, could be your store, could be your school, could be your multiplayer game. The client logs in and they make a request. And this request could be anything. It could be just joining the homepage. It could be creating an account. It could be moving around in your game. Whenever the client performs some action, they're sending a request to your server. Now, Node is the main server, but Express is a module of Node, so the two work together. They're intertwined. And Express is going to take the client requests and it's going to send them a response in return. It's going to perform what the client wants. For example, if the client wants to send a message to the chat board, the client will send the message to the server, and the server will then send their message to all the other clients. And in that way, you have a working chat board where everyone can talk to each other and see each other's messages. This is a huge step beyond just a local website where you log in and you send messages to yourself, but you can't communicate to anyone else. That's why back-end web development is so important to know. And by knowing both front-end and back-end web development, you will be what's known as a full-stack developer, meaning you know how to build not just the user interface, but also how to handle all this back-end stuff with servers, databases, etc. Now, Express can also use templating languages like ESX or Jade, where these help you create the template for each client, so the user interface. That is optional. And then also optionally, Express works with databases. So a database like Mongo or Firebase, these store your client data over time. So you could store every player that's ever played your game. You could store every chat message ever sent. You could store accounts such as usernames, passwords. You could store also products if you're running an online store. And Express is the middleware managing your whole website. All right, so now that we know what is Express, we're going to jump into actually getting our hands dirty and coding with Express. Express is quite an important topic. It's often a requirement for jobs, as is backend web development and Node.js. And it's going to help you not only add this very in-demand topic to your resume, but also it's going to help you learn more about JavaScript itself. Let's begin in the next lecture where we will start coding with Express.
Hello everyone and welcome back to our course. In this lecture, we're going to build a simple web server with Express, so that way we can learn how to deploy that web server and that project via Heroku. So go into your terminal or command prompt application and cd into a folder where you want to build your project folder, like documents. Now that we're inside of the documents folder, we can verify that with pwd. And here I'm going to create a new project folder with mkdir. I will call this project hello deploy. Then I'll hit enter, and now I have hello deploy, so I can cd into the hello deploy project folder. Currently, there's nothing in the folder. You can list out the contents with ls on Mac or dir on Windows. There's nothing in the folder. So we want to initialize a new npm project with npm init. For that, you do have to have npm installed. Then you can hit enter through all of this data about the project. So now we have a package.json file in our folder, which has all of this project information right here. Okay, then we're going to install the Express package into this project because Express is going to allow us to easily write a web server. I'll use npm install Express and hit enter. And then we can create our actual application file that will host or store the server. The hosting is done by Heroku, but let's now actually create the web server. So for that, I'm going to create a new file with the command touch on Mac or Notepad on Windows, and the file will be called app.js. So I can see now I have app.js. I've also got node_modules, which stores all of my npm packages like Express. And we also have package lock, which is just a locked version of package. Okay, now we can open up app.js. You can open it with a code editor, or you can open it with your terminal if you have Nano. You can use nano app.js, and that will just open the file right here in the terminal. We're going to build a quick web server. So first we'll use const app, and require the Express module that we just installed. Then following that, we are going to set our port constant, which will be process.env.port or a specific port like port 3000. Now we have to use process.env.port because Heroku doesn't actually take a specific port number like 3000. Heroku will only use its own port. So you have to specify that the port can be either Heroku's port or port 3000 if we're testing the server. Then we can use app.get to get a home page. And here we can take in a request and a response, and we'll have a callback function. Inside of here, we're going to use response.send to send some string, which will show on the home page of the site. So here, let's put in some text that says this is deployed by Heroku. Okay, and finally, we'll have one more listener here, app.listen, to actually start up the server. We're listening on our port. Then we'll have a callback function, and when the app has begun listening, we can call console.log and say that our app has started. All right, then we can save this file. So don't save the terminal output, just use here Control X, then hit yes and enter if you're using Nano. So now our app.js file has been modified. And we can start up our application right now by using Node. You do have to have Node installed. We can call app.js, and look at that. We get the message app has started, which tells us that the web server with Express has started listening on port 3000. We can also go to localhost 3000 in our browser. Here I am in my web browser at localhost port 3000, and I can see the text, this is deployed by Heroku. Now currently we're just running this project locally, so only we can see the project at localhost 3000. It's a local version of the web server. So with Heroku, we can make the web server public. And so instead of using port 3000, Heroku will use its own port. So now that we have our web server built out, we need to also build out a PRC file for Heroku, because Heroku needs to be specifically told how it can start the web server. So let's go ahead and create the PRC file. And for that, we are going to go into our terminal again. I'm just going to kill our server. And I'm going to use Touch, or you can use Notepad, to create a new file called PROC file. Now, note here that make sure you don't have an extension to the file. It should not be procfile.js. It should just be proc file in this exact naming. You can open the proc file with a notepad or a code editor. Just make sure when it's saved, it is not saved with any extension. So you can open up proc file in your terminal or with just an application. In here, we need to tell our Heroku app how it can start the server. So this is just for Heroku. This file is not required for anything else. Here we're going to use web and pass in node./app.js. This will tell Heroku that to run the app on the web, we need to use Node, and we need to go into the parent folder of this current file, which is just the project folder, and we need to go into the file app.js. So we're just calling node app.js. Let's save this file with Control X, Y, and then enter. All right, so now we have that file saved. So next step, now that we have our project ready, we can build a GitHub repository to actually store the files with version control, because Heroku needs some kind of version control system in order to host your files. So we're going to link our GitHub repository with our Heroku app. Join me in the next section. We'll learn how to deploy this server with GitHub and Heroku.
Hey everyone, thanks for watching this course. If you want to watch the rest of the course, the link is down below. Not only will you get the access to this course, but you'll get access to a lot of other courses in a huge bundle, and it's on sale today. So buy before the sale ends. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in another video.